We knew Washington was going to be good, but I think it's time everybody else figured that out.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back in to another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. He's site editor with Athlon Sports' Inside the Huskies. I'm the site editor with Huskies Wire. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the day, as we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Go to 5hourenergy.com and use promo code LOCKEDONCFB to get 20% off your order. Lars, we got a really fun show coming out all the everydayers today. We're going to start talking Apple Cup because even though it's the middle of September, it is that time where we're talking about Washington's offense versus a Wazoo defense that has not been great to start the year. We're talking just defensive units and what we think has been the most impressive: pass rush, secondary. I don't know. We'll get there. But Lars, is it time we revisited our UW record predictions where we both had them at 8-4 to start the year? And we've been really impressed with this team. We haven't necessarily been impressed with some of their competition.
Exactly. And I think that's also part of what makes it hard to judge. Are they better than what we thought? Well, they're as good as what we thought because they handled their first two opponents rather easily. And I think that was the expectation. Yeah. But now it's, does 8-4 turn in? Is 9-3 gettable? Is 10-2 possible?
Sure.
9-3, I think we both feel is now at least more gettable than it was. 10-2, I'm still reserving judgment on that until I see a consistent offensive line, which I think by the end of September we'll have a better sense of after the Northwestern and Rutgers game, and certainly this week against Washington State. Because this week against Washington State, I've always viewed as like the third preseason game, which is, okay, you know what you're going to have in your team. You want to get your starters. Now, a little bit differently because obviously your starters are playing the whole game. But now this is like, hey, this is the third level up. This is the better competition. It's a former Power 4, I guess still Power 4, depending on how you want to classify it, because technically the Pac-12 is still a thing, you know, a Pac-2, but it's crazy to still see the Pac-12 existing in general. Anyways, but the point of what I say all this is, obviously Washington should still win this game on Saturday. But when it's a rivalry game, like we saw with Iowa State, you know, you can kind of play up. We saw it last year with the Apple Cup as well. So I think once we get through this week, if they're able to handle Wazoo the same way they handled Eastern Michigan and Weber State, then now I think absolutely we're talking 9-3, 10-2. I'm just kind of it's possible that they could go above 8-4. I'm just still not fully there yet.
So I certainly hear where you come from. I'm in the same boat, where I've been really impressed. I've been really happy with the play that we've seen from the defense, where, you know, we got some everydayers, some people in the comments saying, oh, you really think this defense is going to be elite? Yeah. Look at those first 2 weeks. Yeah. This has been a really, really fun defense to watch at all three levels of the field. The linebackers have been tremendous. The pass rush had 7 sacks on Saturday, and the secondary has just been absolutely smothering, where they're still not allowing 4 yards per attempt. That's how good this secondary has been. They're allowing 6 points per game. Hats off to Jesus Gomez for especially that 57-yarder. Like that dude is one of the best kickers in the nation. And, you know, you take away 2 50-plus yard field goal attempts, which I want to say 95% of kickers in college aren't going to be able to try at this point, Washington would be averaging 3 points per game allowed on defense. This is a really, really fun unit to watch. And you combine that with an offense that is shown to be crisp. It is shown to be explosive at times. And it has shown to be above everything else efficient. Jonah Coleman is averaging, I think, 8.5 yards per carry right now over his first 2 games, where, the level of competition is certainly one thing. But beyond that, it's Will Rogers is not turning the ball over. He's had, if we're looking at PFF metrics, which I don't have those in front of me, I would say he's had 1 turnover-worthy play in the course of his first 2 weeks. And just the more I watch him, the more I say, this is exactly what I expected from him. A highly efficient guy who gets the ball into the hands of his receivers, is going to complete a high percentage of his passes, and has been really, really effective. And then, you look at that overall, where there's still some things to clean up offensively on special teams, but everything that, where it was like, 8-4, maybe 9-3 is the ceiling. It feels like the ceiling is very, very slowly being raised, where it's not there yet. It's not, but it's getting to that point.
It's exactly how I would describe the offensive line. It's getting better. It's still not there, but it's trending in the right direction, just like the team is trending in the right direction.
Yeah.
In the sense that it's not a finished product. I mean, we saw Jeremiah get more involved. We saw another 100-yard game for Jonah. I think that, first of all, that might be the more telling indicator here. If Jonah is able to get 100 yards back to back, something he never did at Arizona, my offensive line question still exists because again, Maximus McCree plays a career high 22 snaps in one game more than he ever played at Maryland. So clearly that means the staff, believes in him, and he handled himself pretty well. Actually had an 80 pass blocking grade on PFF. Speaking of PFF. And so I think once Max is able to get fully into the swing of things, and if you can solidify that left tackle spot, and guard's been fantastic. D'Angelo's been pretty good. Enoch's been fantastic. Drew's been the MVP of that line because
Drew's been elite.
Yeah. It's absolutely appropriate when Jedd said, I think Drew was the first one to win a starting job. I think I was back in the spring. I was like, yeah, checks out. That checks out. So the offensive line is probably better than what we thought. I'll just, at least from my perspective, I think it's better than what I thought for the first 2 weeks. Still has been great, in terms of what you need to have against Big Ten play. But I think the better that unit gets and the more cohesion it has, then you start to see it. But the problem is it's like, well, as they go, we can say, okay, no, it's getting better. It's trending in the right direction, but they're still not there. So I think once they reach that point, which again, I would say probably is going to be after the Rutgers game, then you have a sense going into October of, okay, this is the offensive line they've had for 2 straight weeks, playing a majority of the snaps. Jonah's getting 100 yards on every game. Now you're talking about a truly balanced offense with an elite defense. You can start to cook there a lot more than 8-4.
I certainly agree with you there. And yeah, it's a little early to just say, oh yeah, no, the ceiling is going to be 10-2 now, where all of a sudden it's like, oh, if we're looking at my predictions, like, oh yeah, is Penn State gettable? Is USC gettable? Where there's still a little bit of patience to be had. That's for sure. Like Michigan being another one where there's still a little bit of patience to be had there. But at the same point, it's the ceiling is a lot higher where, I certainly have some tweets bookmarked from opposing fan bases where it's, oh, this is a 3-9, 4-8 team. They're going to struggle. They're going to look terrible. Where I really hope that all those tweets have been deleted already. But seriously, the more I look at this team, I just see a very well-coached team in every facet of the game, where the special teams woes that we saw last week, I think those are going to be cleaned up. I don't think those are going to be a problem going forward. And I think especially if we see a little bit more Maximus McCree at left tackle, I think the offensive line is all of a sudden going to be a lot more solid, where that's a guy with a little bit more experience, and you give Solani Fasolo a chance to really continue to develop his technique for another season, which is good. You want that, especially from a guy with that frame and that athleticism, and that's just everything that he has. It's all ceiling, and he needs another year to develop it, and that's okay. That's something that's okay right now. Where with a guy like Will Rogers in there, you want to make sure that he's somebody where he's not DeMond Williams. He's not going to be able to create nearly as much when a play breaks down, where he's really smart. And we saw him, especially against Weber State, where, he had a couple of those shovel passes to Cameron Davis, where that's awesome. Where that's probably the extent of his playmaking ability, where DeMond, scrambling outside the pocket, is able to pick up way more with his legs, where, if you have both those guys in there, as much as that might be a concern for DeMond, it's just, it's helping him, as Jedd Fish said, it could be a bit of a welcome to college football moment for him. And I think moving forward, just the more we see from this offensive line, especially if it continues to gel and they really do settle on 5 guys instead of, a constant rotation where Zach Henning playing that other tight end spot, that's one thing. I don't think that's going to be, something that we're going to see a whole lot more of going forward, or like once Quentin Moore gets back, but it's just nice to have that extra blocking, have all those extra things in there. But the main thing is that cohesion up front, whatever it looks like, whatever it might be. Once we see more of that cohesion up front, this is going to be a really, really solid group at every level on offense too. And I'm just really excited about it. I think the ceiling is going to end up being a lot higher than 8-4 by the end of the year. Lars, we talked about elite defense. Which group is better, the pass rush or the secondary? Which we'll get to right after a message from our friends over at 5 Hour Energy, because 5 Hour Energy is so helpful for so many things. Like I love it before a workout, where if you want to get in shape but have trouble staying motivated, you should make 5 Hour Energy charts shots part of your lifestyle and get the energy boost you need to get fit. We all know you sometimes don't want to go to the gym. Take a 5-hour energy shot to give you the feeling and alertness so you can get to the gym, which is super helpful after a long day of work. And especially, Lars and I are at Husky Stadium pretty late sometimes, and getting a 5-hour energy can be so helpful because with zero sugar and a convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. The 5-hour energy website has flavors galore like watermelon, tropical burst, grape, berry, and more. There's a flavor for everyone. Try them all. On the site, you even have the option to build your own 12 or 24 pack. You choose the flavors and it's delivered right to your door. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that is the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5-hour energy product today, you can use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. Lars, which group do you think is better? I'm just going to take the other side no matter what you say here. The pass rush or the secondary when it comes to Washington's defense?
So I'm going to take the secondary just for the simple fact of when you look at what causes a good pass rush. Well, you have to have the coverage on the back end to make that happen. Now, sure, you got to get the push up front, but we've seen a number of times through the first couple of games where maybe the pass rush doesn't necessarily get home, but the coverage allows for it. Nobody's able to get open. And then those 2, 3, 4 seconds go by, and then Washington's able to get to the quarterback. Against Weber State, we saw Richie Munoz get out of the pocket a little bit. Didn't see that as much from Cole Snyder. So I saw it a little bit, but not a concerning amount. I think when you look at John Mateer at Washington State, big,
the game for that is going to be different there when it comes to guys like Carson and Alfonso Tupatala. Yeah,
exactly. And so, but I think when it comes to, challenging a younger quarterback, everything starts with a secondary because Canberra Stars can come down and do a couple of different things. Thaddeus has been great in coverage. Elijah's been Elijah Jackson, highest graded PFF coverage grade to the first 2 games for Washington as a backup. So when Jedd Fish says they have 3 to play 2, they really have 3 solid quarterbacks. So I think that also allows the defense to do a number of different things. Elijah can go at safety, 3 safeties. There's so many different things that having a good cohesive secondary allows them to do. And also can't forget Jordan Shaw. My word, his rebounding ability, and he got away with pass interference. So I probably should say that as well. But still made a great play on the ball for a couple plays against Eastern Michigan. I don't know about that.
Tick-tack. They didn't call it. That's what matters. But I like your point. I'm gonna raise you one here where you said that because you're right. Jedd Fish did say, "Oh yeah, we got 3 to play 2 at corner." They have 6, 7 to play. Sometimes there are 3 or 4 on the field. They have so many bodies there. And that's just an edge rusher. That's without, talking about Sebastian Valdez. That's without talking about Javon Parker. That's without talking about Bryce Butler, Linneas Davis. And this is a really fun pass rush group, man, where I love the rotation that they have up front there where, the more I think about what this group can be in the Big Ten, if it continues to click like it did on Saturday, the more excited I get. Where Zach Durfee looked tremendous. It's like there's no way around it. I feel that's the only way we can break down his game is he looked tremendous. Every single snap, he was dominant, which is exactly what we saw from him in the spring, especially before he got hurt, which is really nice to see. And then, outside of that, Isaiah Ward looked really, really good in the first game. Deshaun Lynch was fantastic. He was flashing all over the field as a pass rusher. Jaden Wayne has had a couple of nice plays. Voy Tanufi is just obviously whenever he gets on the field, he finds a way to wreak havoc in the backfield. Javon Parker had half a sack. Valdez got his. Linneas Davis got his. Bryce Butler is fantastic at shooting gaps. And, I say all this just to say this group and this attack individually, these are all talented guys. And then we saw a little bit more than I honestly expected from Steve Belichick in terms of some of the stunts and some of the unique things that he showed us in the course of the spring and the fall, where there's one play where Alfonso Tupatala, had the little stunt where the one that Deshaun Lynch got his sack on was the perfect example of a nice TE stunt that he just, was unblocked in the B gap and just ran through to the quarterback. But I say all this to say the talent is there. And the scheme is there, and the way it's been put together, as Zach Durfee told us after Saturday's game, where he said, this defense does a tremendous job of allowing everybody to play to their strengths and play to their highest skill set, which, as fantastic as it is in the secondary, The secondary is able to have some of the opportunities at creating turnovers, which I certainly assume they'll have way more of in the coming weeks because the pass rush can be so dominant.
And I think that feeds into your point. How many, this is just Big Ten, this is going to answer your question, it's going to feed off your point perfectly. How many out of top 20 Washington players are there on man coverage in the Big Ten? In the top individual player grades, like how many guys are in that top 20? Yeah. When it comes to man coverage. 4.
I'm going to say
9.
4.
9. Almost half of the top 20 are Washington in man coverage. So what does that tell you? That means you're confident in your pass rush to get home because you're not having guys, oh, hey, we need a safety over the top to protect this weaker corner, or we need to, disguise the obliques. It's like, no, we're going to let them cook. Like, our pass rush, that's why it feeds into your point perfectly. It means our pass rush is so good, we're leaving our guys on an island more often than not. And that's all of them. That's not just Alphesius. That's not just that. It's everybody.
And that's one of the fun things about this defense, where the help is there if they need it from the safeties over the top sometimes. But it allows you to do so much up front, where I was somewhat shocked about I haven't seen like a blitz percentage or some of these advanced stats, but I was somewhat shocked by the amount of blitzing that Carson Bruner and Alfonso Tuputala did do on Saturday. And not necessarily because, I didn't think it worked, because obviously it worked very well, but just in terms of, I feel that they can hit home with 4, and then seeing, 5, 6 guys rush the quarterback and just put so much pressure on Cole Snyder was a lot of fun to see. And I think about it because of what you just said, where it's, I thought they were more confident, and I'm not saying they're not, but I thought they were so incredibly confident with their guys in the back end, where it's, we're just going to hit home with 4. We want to test these guys in coverage and see what some of this other stuff looks like is more what I'm saying.
Yeah, but at the same point, I can see why. I mean, in reality, it's about the numbers still balancing out. So if you have Zoe come in and Isaiah Ward drop back, you're still bringing 4. It just looks different. And I think that's what makes Steve Belichick. Also, this is what I want to ask him at some point, where I went back and watched the game tape. I don't think he has a play sheet. It looked like he had a yellow piece of paper in his hand, just a piece of paper kind of ruffling in his hand that he was looking down at every now and then. And I'm thinking to myself, like, is this man really doing this off of a single sheet of notes? Because that's even more impressive. And it's not condescending. It's like legitimately. It's like, I want to know what's on that notebook, because like, what adjustments has he had to make? Because he's made every single adjustment he's needed to make, and yet he hasn't even shown more than 50-60% of the playbook in terms of what the defense truly can do from a scheming up perspective.
Sure, if he's doing all that off the dome, that would just be the greatest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. I would love that so much. But the more I think about this defense, like, it all just plays so perfectly, where it's really, I know I've said this a lot, and it's really silly to talk about this in terms of like the patriotisms, like the do your job, all the little things, but it all works in cohesion so well, where something that you just said, where you're talking about, guys dropping into coverage. I remember pointing it out in the press box on Saturday. There was a play where it looked like Eastern Michigan was trying to set up a bubble screen of some sort, where they had trips to their side of the field on their bench, and Lance Holtzclaw was lined up on the edge, and he dropped out, and he was just kind of sitting there waiting for it. And whatever the read was from Snyder, he said, okay, no, I'm not even going to look that way. I can't look that way because it looks like it's going to get blown up, or he was fooled, or whatever it looked like. It worked perfectly. And there are so many little things like that where I feel like those are things we haven't seen. Like, they're even different than looks that Pete Kwiatkowski threw out there. This is just what kind of defensive coordinator that Steve Belichick is and always has been. And, Lars, we've talked a lot about the Belichick effect of not just Steve, of, Bill helping out, because he's the one who really built what this scheme is. This is what it is. This is what we're talking about.
Exactly. And it's what we've all what we saw throughout fall camp, which was, there's so much potential, and you can't necessarily pin this defense down to 1 or 2 specific things. It's just a matter of, by game, they can almost adapt as they need. And I think that's what makes it such a dangerous defense. But again, that's why you go out and get a guy like Steve Belichick, where it's, I could go and get this guy, and he's a riser, he's a well-known DC, long time in the business. It's like, no, go younger. invest, commit, and look what the result has been through the first couple of weeks, and it's only going to get better.
That's one of my favorite parts about it, is that this still just seems to be the tip of the iceberg, where, to touch on what we were talking about a little bit earlier, this is why I have them beating Iowa, because of this defense. Iowa's defense is elite too, but in a very, very different way than what Washington's can be, where I feel like this defense is going to throw so many obscure looks that even experienced quarterbacks like Cade McNamara haven't seen before. And it's really exciting to think about. And Lars, with that being said, we know that Washington's defense can have a little bit of fun against Wazoo, but how is Jedd Fisch going to attack a defense that is not great? Which we'll get to right after a message from our friends over at Ibotta. It's summertime, which means it's barbecue season. Stock up on all your grilling favorites and earn cash back on every purchase when you use Ibotta. So you won't have to choose between burgers or hot dogs. You can get both. Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. You can earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That can cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, that flight you've been eyeing, or the fancy dinner you've been craving. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much. With Ibotta, you earn cash back that you can withdraw to your bank account, PayPal, or gift card. Simply add offers in the app, upload your receipt, and voila, the money is yours. It's time you join the over 50 million users who use Ibotta to earn cash back every time they shop. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back, and use code LOCKEDONCollege when you register. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store, and use code LOCKEDONCollege. So Lars, off the cuff, if you don't have it in front of you like I do, where out of the 134 FBS teams, where does Washington State rank in terms of yards allowed per game?
105?
124. They are giving up 470 yards per game right now through the first two. And, Texas Tech is high-flying offense, but there are a lot of holes for Jedd Fisch and his team to exploit here. How do you think they're going to do it?
I mean, I'm looking at the PFF coverage grades right now, and I mean, there's not a lot of pass rush from Washington State, which tells me the offensive line, if it can hold up even just a little bit, Will Rogers is about to go air raid Mike Leach on the Cougars, because this is a game that is shaping up perfectly for Jeremiah, for Denzel, for Giles. Right? I'm looking at this coverage. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, their linebacker Tariq is their best coverage guy by far. And again, so it's like saying Carson's your best linebacker, your best coverage guy. It's like, okay, cool, Carson's good, but Carson plays as a linebacker, not cornerback or safety. So I'm not necessarily worried about his coverage grade. And that's why when I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, man, I think Jedd's gonna have a field day. Like, I don't personally, it's, but at the same time, I thought Grubb was gonna cook last year. And so I think as long as the scary thing for Washington is they start so slow that if you let Wazoo get momentum in a rivalry game, then you got a problem. So whatever Jedd can't do to scheme things open in the first three drives, he's got to figure that out ASAP this weekend, because he needs to start fast this week. He knows it. We know. We said it last week. It's like, if he can start fast, this game is over by halftime, similar to how like the Portland State the Wazoo game was 48 to whatever at halftime. It's like, sure, that very well might be a carbon copy, except Washington representing Washington State and Wazoo representing Portland State on that one.
So I certainly see where you're going there. It's not Friday. I'm going to save my bold predictions for then. But when I look at this team, you're right. It's the perfect time to have a balanced offensive attack where they're giving up 188 yards on the ground per game. Like, Jonah Coleman could feast on that. Cameron Davis, Adam Muhammad. You have a three-headed rushing attack where I have a feeling that we're going to see, I don't want to say the window dressing that necessarily, where when Jake Butt was on here last week talking about the jet sweep, the fake jet sweep to Giles that turned into the Decker DeGraff touchdown, where I don't know if that's necessarily some of the stuff that we're going to see, but Jedd has done such a great job the first couple of weeks, and it shows on his film at Arizona too, that he can prepare for any defense. With a defense like this, it feels like there are so many different ways that you can attack. Where if you want to go with Denzel Boston, Jeremiah Hunter, and of course Giles Jackson, if you want to get to that trio of wide receivers early and often, great. You should have an opportunity to do that. If you want to go, with the ground game and give Jonah Coleman 15, 20 carries in the first half, which I don't think that's what's going to happen, where you have such a nice stable running backs, you don't have to. Great. That's another nice way to go about it. And I feel like it's going to mesh perfectly, where we're not going to see him go super pass heavy. We're not going to see him go super run heavy, because I feel like what Jedd Fisch's or offense does best, and what we've seen it do in the first couple of weeks, is catch these opposing defenses, leaning one way, where it's, it looks like they're seeing one look, and he says, yeah, that's what I want you to see, so I'm going to do something else. Where I feel like that's one of the things that this scheme does best.
Yeah, I mean, it was what they did in the opener, which was they ran it 2 more times and they threw it, I think. Is that, or was it, maybe it's the other way around? But and then last week they ran it 28 times, threw it 29. Like, it's a balanced offense. Like, you cannot get more balance than this. And I think it's exactly, what we're saying. It's what you want, where you could still shift 60, 40, 70, 30 either way, depending on how the game plays out. Like, if a team is, really locking you down in coverage but struggling against the run, you can just turn it to Jonah and Adam and Cam and be like, okay, cool, you guys take over because we can't pass the ball.
Sure.
Flip side of that, which I think will be the case this weekend, will just air it out, figure it out. Just do whatever you want. Cook. Like, you have an entire restaurant at your disposal here to make, anything you want. Go hunting.
Sure.
You and Max go hunting. And so I think that they might go cougar hunting this week, because they have to start fast. Because for me, it's like, if they don't get into the momentum, this team still has kind of shown, the offense specifically has shown, we can kind of slug it. We can be a little sluggish. But the defense, and that's why, like, when you talk about it, it's Jedd has every reason to get up for this game and just play fast from the jump and attack it. He doesn't have to be conservative or try and get the run game going, because this game you can pretty much win either way.
I'm certainly with you there, where it's a very winnable game in terms of what this defense shows. Where I have full confidence in Steve Belichick's defense to find a way to contain John Mateer and do some of the other things that that Wazoo has shown offensively through the first couple of weeks. Where I'm just more excited about this matchup, where just with what Jedd can draw up and what we think he has in his bag that he can go to, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch, where especially, thinking about getting into Big Ten play, where they're certainly not going to be overlooking this game. That's not what I'm saying. Where just thinking about getting into the start of Big Ten play and saying, okay, well, we want to put this on film now. We want to put that on film now, so we can work something off of this look. Like, I think that's going to be a lot of what we've seen this week. And for one, we're just going to see a whole bunch of different things that maybe we've seen already the first couple of weeks, but I haven't seen it executed in this way, where all of a sudden the motion's going right and they're working back to the left. I just think that that's going to be a significant amount of what this offense turns into in week 3.
Yeah. And I wonder, is this a game? Do you think Jedd, obviously he didn't get gun shy with it, but the way he put DeMond in the first half against Eastern Michigan, that was a little suspect for me. Like, if you're going to do that with DeMond, no, because I like the principle of attacking a team that struggles with a running quarterback, but it was after Will had already ran a play on that drive. And so I think for me, do it at the beginning of the drive, because here's the thing, Landon then comes in and skips it. And so it's like, to me, I think just getting the cohesion is still there. It's still needing to be worked out.
I don't think that's what it is. I think it's a situational thing. I think it's, if we're in this down and distance, let's try this. I don't know if that's what we're going to see this weekend. I don't. Where I don't think that's a it's like Will is like, we want to make sure Will gets a certain amount of snaps. It's more of just they might be saving those looks for a little bit later on, where in terms of what Wazoo does defensively, I just think that it's something where you don't need to necessarily show all your cards right there, where Jedd certainly wanted to do it and show that he has that in his bag. And maybe that's what it was about, saying, it's 2nd and 6 and they brought in DeMond. We know he can run. We know he can do this and that, where maybe that's what it was. And maybe now they're going to have to prepare for that this week, because they showed that look and he's just not going to go to it.
Yeah, well, I think it also was Jedd got tired of me answering the question of, hey, are you going to play DeMond in a non-backup / fourth quarter mop-up role? And I guess that we all knew the answer was yes. Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, of course we knew the answer was yes. I was beating that drum since March, but yeah, it's a matter of when and how often does it look? Is it 4? Right?
Yeah.
Is it 4 games? So I think DeMond will absolutely play, but I think it's just a matter of, I think this is a game ultimately where it should just go back to the old fashioned, just get up early, stay up late, put it away, get the freshmen in, call it a wrap. Because, and this is also, by the way, you're playing at Lumen, so those freshmen, they're probably going to play a lot of freshmen. Because if you think about it, getting them that experience in an NFL stadium, Jedd's going to sell that as much as possible. And this is just kind of built a building block of fish to say, you know what, this is a game we absolutely should win. Will's going to cook, Jonah's going to cook, defense going to cook, but we want to also kind of lay the foundation for the future. So I'm curious to see, as long as they can get in or get ahead, how many guys can end up getting us. We saw 9 in the first game, decent amount the second game. The question is going to be, well, do you want to or not? Because they can. It's just a question to your point of with the same thing of Jedd and DeMond. It's like, will you? Because you can. It's just, will you?
I think that he said it perfectly in his Monday press conference where he said, yeah, redshirting a whole bunch of guys is not part of our program. So I think the answer either way is going to end up being yes in some way, shape, or form. And Lars, with that being said, as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you all the everydayers tuning in. We really do appreciate your support, and thank you for making Locked On Huskies your first list of the day. Now go check out the Locked On College Football podcast from NIL deals, never-ending conference realignment rumors. Our buddy Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. You can find the link to Locked On College Football in the description, so you don't need to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating the channel through content every single day. So please make sure you hit that like button, click that little bell, so you never miss when we post a new video. You have any questions, comments, concerns, drop them right down below in the comment section. And if you're audio only, please leave us 5-star reviews. It does help us out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you on Tuesday.